Welcome to Real Estate and Taxes with Lakshay. I will be helping you minimize your taxes. Welcome to Real Estate and Taxes with Lakshay. Today we're going to be talking about what's the most in-demand business in Canada. It is daycare business. There's going to be two topics and two models that we're going to be talking about today, followed by their restrictions, their income statement of a daycare, what are some of the grants and subsidies around it, and followed by the conclusion. So without further ado, let's get started. So what business are we talking about? We're talking about the daycare business, and some of the daycare services include babysitting, care for older children. It could be through a licensed or an unlicensed home-based agency versus a commercial unit. It could be related to nanny services, or it could be related to early childhood education. So all of this in combination is what we are talking about in today. Our focus is basically home versus commercial. The home-based childcare providers are basically either overseen by an agency, or you can get an unlicensed home childcare business. In both of them, there are some restrictions as to how many children you can have, including your own. So basically, you can have roughly 6 children in a home-based business where it is by the licensed agency. If it's an unlicensed home daycare business, then you can go up until maximum of 5 children. So there's also age restrictions around it. So you should highly recommend going to the government's website to keep yourself up to date on what the teacher to student ratio is and what the age restrictions are. So what are the ratios looking like? For infants, you need at least 3 teachers per 10 students. For toddlers, you need 1 teacher for every 5 students. For preschool, you need 1 student for every 8, and so on and so forth. So that is something to keep in mind, because this restriction is very deeply followed by the federal government. So next, we want to talk about why is it most in demand. Well, as you might have someone in your family or yourself, there's a long wait list to get into daycares. There's low barriers to entry, and you can operate from home as well. You have the option for licensed versus unlicensed. The fourth and foremost is it is best for newcomers in the country who are new and they want to start off somewhere. It yields roughly $4,000 to $5,000 a month. So again, a great strategy for someone who wants to get their feet wet in a business model and get started with this business. Now let's look at what is the cost of opening a daycare. If you were to go through the commercial route, most of the revenue that you're going to collect is go towards the salaries. Why? Is because daycare is maintained through a teacher to student ratio, and those ratios are dictated by the government. So it's not like you can continuously increase your revenue or charge more even and not pay attention to the teacher to student ratio. As you hire more, get more students, you have to increase your staff, so the salaries keeps on eating away most of the profit. Some of the other big ticket items like construction that is done to maintain the facility, there's usually people take a loan, so interest on loan takes 5%, utilities taking 3%, which is day to day like internet and hydro bills. Supplies and books and toys will take 4%. You need to make sure that you have equipped daycare facility to make sure the kids are fully entertained and they're basically learning and applying their knowledge. Your insurance takes away 2% of the business. Next, you want to focus on groceries as well. 3% of it goes towards snacks. So that is some of the way that you can see the breakdown of the expenses. So the margins here is very slim. It's only 6 to 8%. As you can see, on $500,000 of income, they only walked away with $35,000 in net income, which is actually worse off than having a minimum wage job. So something to think about when it comes to operating your daycare. Some of the additional requirements that kind of creates the red tape around this business is you need to have agency enrollment, you need to have first aid training. Food handling certificate is also something that you should have, because a lot of students have nut allergies. So those are some of the things you need to be well aware of before starting this business. And getting a police clearance certificate for all of the family members, even if the family members are not actively involved in the business. If you're operating from home, this is a must. Office supplies like toys and arts and craft material would obviously need to be repurchased over and over again in order to make sure that the kid is fully applying their skills and learning something at your daycare. Now let's go a little bit more in the subsidies and grants available. Well, there's something called Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare, CWELCC. This basically is the program which is trying to reduce the cost of daycare for the consumer. And in 2026, they're focusing towards $10 a day programs. The mission of this program is technically to provide with affordable daycare services and help lower the childcare fees, and also want to increase the number of daycares that are open. And that is basically what they're focusing on. They're focused on more inclusive workforce, more inclusivity, and trying to talk to the business owners to meet in the middle ground. So if you have a kid who is 2 years old, you would primarily be paying $70 per day. But with the help of, if your child daycare enrolls into this program, now the subsidy kicks in and you will only be entitled to pay $29, which is half the amount of the daycare. And you can basically end up saving $10,600 on an annual basis. The second example is if you have a toddler, which is let's say 18 months of age, 18 months old, and the daycare cost is roughly, let's say, $62 per day. If your daycare participates in this grant subsidy program, the cost will drop to half for you, which will be $29 as a parent, and which is again another saving of $8,500. So what are some of the other cons is the capital investment to open a new daycare is quite high because you have some HVAC requirement, height restrictions that you have to meet. Also, the second con would be the government controls the fee that you charge as an operator. No other business has to go through this. The other not so qualitative factor is people who are working at the daycare, they tend to fall sick more often. Why? Kids continuously play in the grass and catch new infections. And if you're looking after them, it's natural to catch some diseases from them as well. It's not an easy business to be in. So all in all, my conclusion is the only way to work or operate a daycare, if you're a newcomer to Canada, start it from home. Look for a licensed agency near you. Get yourself enrolled and get your CPR certification, first aid training. So this would be a good model for someone who's newcomer. I highly recommend coupling up with the education system of Canada, because otherwise if you're operating it outside, it is very difficult to meet the requirements of the infrastructure, maintain liability insurance, minimum staff ratios. Those are very expensive items to do. So with this, I would like to conclude, and thank you once again for joining in on today's session. We'll see you next week on Tuesday. Thanks.